going on, everybody? Today on the bench, we have Scott from Power Tank with us today. We're super excited to kind of give you a deep dive and overview of all the Power Tank products. So we're super excited about this video. If you haven't seen Power Tanks before, this is going to be a very informative video and kind of give you the breakdown of why you should definitely consider upgrading to a Power Tank for your vehicle. Excited to have Scott here today. Appreciate you coming by.
Yeah. So we've got a couple different of Power Tanks offerings here. These are PT systems. These are the full-size CO2 air source. So the heart of the system is this tank. It has liquid CO2 in it, and it uses the vapors that rise off the liquid CO2 to inflate tires, run air tools at full speed. It can also do things that normal compressors struggle to do, like reseat a bead in up to a 46-inch tire. So a lot of the things that are inherent advantages of a CO2 system are just the amount of volume you actually have in here to be able to inflate tires. Having a tank this size is like having a 600-gallon air tank compressed to 150 psi.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Even the yellow one over here, that's 400 gallons. A 400-gallon air tank is roughly the size of like a four-door Jeep. So it's a fairly substantial amount of air. The nice thing about that is it's silent. You don't have to wait for the pressure to build. There's a whole bunch of things that just make this a lot easier to use. It's simpler, and because of that, it's actually very durable, and it's designed to last a lifetime, and it's got a warranty to match that.
So I want to start off with the question that we get the most about Power Tanks are why should someone go for a Power Tank over a traditional kind of hard-mounted or portable air compressor?
Well, there's a few reasons. One, like I said earlier, this is really designed to last a lifetime, so this will work in the vehicle that you have now and whatever you end up driving until you stop driving. It is meant to be a lifetime product because of its lack of moving parts. It has a lot of advantages over a compressor. It doesn't need electricity at all. It has a lot less fittings than a typical hard-mounted onboard air system, and it's very easy to field diagnose and adjust or repair if it needs to. Pretty much everything is straightforward. The anatomy of the system, we've got the tank itself, this protective boot down on the bottom that keeps the metal from actually ending up on the ground. It's got this hex design that allows it to keep from rolling away if it does happen to fall over. We've got the handle grip guard, which has tool storage in it, but this is actually also designed to protect it in the event of up to a 4-foot fall. Oh, wow. So it keeps it from damaging the valve or damaging the gauges or any part of the regulator. The regulator itself is what allows it to use the roughly 1,000 psi supply pressure and regulate it down to something that's usable for air tools or for tire inflation. Two different versions of that. We've actually got the 250 psi HP250, and then we've got the XP400, which is a 400 psi regulator on the 5-pound tank down at the end. So the difference there is that the 400 psi one is a little bit faster in terms of inflation. If you have larger tires, that actually can matter.
Yep.
But it can also be used for things like inflating shocks, and there's some other reasons that you'd want that if you had a shock system that needed to be pressurized.
Yeah, so that's a good rundown. I mean, it seems like it's a lot simpler setup. I mean, the main advantage is really just the faster inflation of tires, especially, it seems like today 37s are the new 35s, and people just get kind of used to running bigger and bigger tires. And if you're running just a basic portable compressor, that can take a very long time to fill those up.
The difference in inflation times, rather than it taking several minutes per tire, you're down to under a minute per tire. You can even go around, even with my 37s, I can air up my entire vehicle in about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
I've got the monster valves, which help a little bit with the speed, but even just the regular Power Tank with the standard Schrader valve in one of these inflators will air up a 15 psi in under 30 seconds.
Right, so Scott, I see you brought a couple different size tanks with us here today. These really come down to kind of basically what size tire you're running. So what is your guidance for our customers out there when they're looking at Power Tanks and knowing which size to go with?
Well, the performance among all of these is exactly the same. It's based on the regulator, but the capacity is really the issue. So if you have the 10-pound tank, like the yellow one over here, that's going to have less capacity than this. You get 50% more in a 15-pound tank. So that means less trips to the refill station. Typically, if you have tires that are 35 or below, 10-pound tank is just fine, or especially if you don't lower your tire pressures a whole lot. If you're somebody who does a lot of rock crawling and goes down 15 or 20 psi, you're probably going to want the larger capacity even if you have tires in 33 or 35. But this really shines when you get up above 35 into tires, even all the way up to 39s or 40s, because That extra added capacity lets you inflate the tires more times before you have to refill. The gauges that are on the regulator, this will tell you, the top gauge will actually tell you the pressure inside the tank, but it doesn't tell you how much of a charge you have left. You actually do have to weigh it. And you see how we referred to these as a 5, 10, or 15 pound tank. That's actually how you tell how much you have left.
Gotcha.
When you get the tank, you actually record the weight of it with nothing in it, and then when it gets filled, that weight goes up 15 pounds. So as you use it, all you need to do is take a scale like this Power T scale that we have and hook it around here, and you can weigh the tank and tell how much you have left. So that gives you an idea of if you have enough to get through this next trip, or if you need to go hit the refill station before you go out.
Gotcha.
The things that you're able to do with these, though, it really adds to your self-reliance. If you are in a remote area, being able to reseat a bead is critical.
Yeah.
I mean, if you for some reason you don't know that you've got a tire leak and you lose that bead, all you really have to do with these is jack the vehicle up, and you can put enough pressure and volume into the tire to reseat the bead. And that's with a small compressor, especially even if it's one that's connected directly to the battery, that's something that they're almost unlikely to ever be able to do.
Yeah, you're
without
just
a
not
whole
going
lot
to
of other stuff.
get enough airflow out of a regular compressor.
No. But being able to do that, and then also being able to run air tools, which are lower cost than having battery-powered tools. You never have to worry about having a flat battery when you do have to change your tire out.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of different opportunities to use this for things that compressors don't really work with. But if you're considering which tank to buy, 35 is kind of a good marker. So 35 and below, go with a 10. 35 and up, you can go with a 15, but there are other reasons. Like if you had, a heavier vehicle with higher tire pressures, you're probably going to want this just because of the amount of volume.
Yep. So they also have this little 5-pounder over here. What would be the use case for this smaller size tank?
So a lot of people will actually use those as a reserve, and if they have this and they are out on a trip and they are running low on pressure in this one, then they switch over to the 5 because the regulators are interchangeable between all of them. So they would mount that somewhere else in the vehicle and be able to use that as a reserve tank until they could get this one filled. Or if someone had smaller tires or didn't reduce their tire pressure as much. If you're just someone that goes wheeling out on some forest roads in a national forest and you really only go down, maybe 8 or 10 PSI just for comfort reasons, that'll get you by on a lot of trips. I mean, the smaller tires are not a lot of pressure loss between your street pressure and your trail pressure.
Right.
Those things are great because they don't have a lot of room that they have to take up. They go in a nice small bag that you can just put in a footwell.
Speaking of mounting options, I know you guys have some vehicle-specific kind of mounting options. What other ways is there to kind of mount these setups?
So we have some vehicle-specific mounts, like you said. We've got some that will actually mount to a roll bar in vehicles that have roll bars, like Broncos or Jeeps, Wranglers, or even Gladiators. But our brackets that we use as part of the vehicle-specific mounts can actually be mounted to any flat surface. So if you have a larger vehicle with a molly panel on it, or you have a pickup truck that has some type of a bed rack, you can always mount those directly to it. And it's a nice strong mount. You can actually put a padlock on it so that if it is something that's in an open space, you're not going to have a theft issue. And all of the hardware is behind it, so it can't be easily removed.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. And then are you able to store these on the outside of your vehicle?
Yes. In fact, that yellow one lives on the outside of my Jeep Wrangler, mounted to my tire swing out, and that stays there for the bulk of the year. There's a regulator cover that you have that can cover over top of it, and really everything else is totally sealed from the elements. Weather doesn't bother these at all.
Nice.
In fact, inclement weather is when these actually shine, because that's when you don't want to be spending a whole lot of time outside. When it's 47 degrees and windy and raining, that's when you don't want to take 10 or 15 minutes. If you were shopping for a power tank, the way you would first pick your size, and then after you pick your size, you figure out how you want to mount it. Beyond that, we've got some different hose options. This is a 30-foot DuraBraid hose that we just came out with. It's a really nice, durable hose that lays flat and extends very easily. We've also got these coiled hoses that are great space savers, so if you don't have a lot of storage room, you can store that a lot more easily, and it just stretches out and then recoils back to exactly where it's at. I mean, it's probably 4 feet when it's all coiled up, but it does stretch out to the full 30, so no matter where you have it mounted, even if it's deep in a trunk, you can get to all 4 tires in most vehicles.
Cool. Is there anything specific to know about the airline? Do you have to use a specific kind of rated PSI?
That's a great question. So all of our hoses are designed for 1200 PSI burst pressure, but they're also 400 PSI working pressure. So these are designed for the higher pressures as well as the low temperatures that CO2 goes. It has to be able to get down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, because it really does, the tank will frost up as you get all of the pressure out of the tank, and these will get very cold, especially if you do several tires in rapid succession. So no matter how many tires you do in a row, you can actually get rid of the entire pressure and all of the volume that's in this tank and still not have a freeze clog situation.
Nice. So one of my favorite thing about the power tanks is this isn't really married to your vehicle, and you're not installing this like under the hood or under the seat.
And sure, with Murphy's Law, like it's always going to be like the last guy in the group trying to get up that ledge is going to lose a beat or have a problem, and nobody wants to back down a really ledgy section of trail just to go and rescue them. So, you know, being able to take that out, carry it down, or if you even have it in a speed bag, all your tools are stored on board.
So I love that aspect of this. The kind of flexibility and portability of this is something I really love.
Yeah, it's really, and it's the heart of your mobile workshop. So it's like, you know, every auto shop in the world has compressed air. You know, this is pre-compressed. You don't have to wait for it to build. It doesn't make any noise. There's a bunch of advantages that it has over a compressor, but being able to run air tools at full speed is one of my favorite aspects.
Yeah, so with all the tanks, I see you have the regulator setups up here. This isn't, maybe unless someone's used to dealing with kind of high compressed gas, they might not be too familiar with what a regulator does and what kind of makes the power tank one special. So if you could give us a little breakdown of the regulators here.
Sure. So this is our basic regulator. It's the HP250i. And this one goes up to 250 psi. The function of the regulator is to take the high supply pressure and move it down to something that's more manageable and controllable. So we can adjust this anywhere between 2 and 250 psi, depending on what we're doing. Especially if you're trying to reseat a bead, you want as much volume and as much pressure as you can possibly get out. So you can crank this one all the way up. The 400 has a lot more specialty uses. Like I said, it's a little bit faster when you're inflating larger tires. If you're going to want to think about maybe running with one of our larger monster valves, you'll be able to inflate tires and almost double the speed as through a standard Trader valve. So having a 400 psi regulator at that point really is worthwhile. It's a slight upgrade to get into one of those, but it's available in all the option packages. So picking the regulator is, you know, there's only 2 choices there, but we do have some things that you can add them with. If you have to put it in an environment where you're going to strain that hose and have to pull it to its full length, that actually gives it a lot of strain relief. That's called a Stiffy Tube. It's a regulator upgrade that we have. These need to be upright or mostly upright when you use them. You can move them back to about here, but any more than that and it's actually getting liquid in through the regulator. We make a product called a snorkel tube so that if you had it on like a pickup truck tailgate, you could mount it totally sideways and use it just like that.
Oh, cool.
So that's something that you can get clocked in any different direction, and then you could leave it hard mounted just like that and use it on its back. The drawback to that is that you always have to use it on its back. So it has to be sideways if you have a snorkel tube installed. But we've thought about all those different things and people's different mounting solutions, and sometimes on a bed rack, the most convenient way to do it is parallel with the ground. So we've got options for that as well. Beyond the regulator situation, we also have the inflators, and there's a lot of different choices there. We make tons of different types of Ventoso inflators. This body was actually designed from the ground up to be used with CO2. All of the hoses have swivels on both sides, and they're designed to work up to 400 psi, just like our hoses are. We've started out with our 2 most basic models here, but these are also what the bulk of the people end up getting with their power tank systems. This is a 0 to 60 psi analog liquid filled gauge. This is our digital model that goes from 5 to 60 psi. Normally you would think, well, why wouldn't I have a higher psi gauge? If you really only go between 30 and 10, being in this range is going to be a lot more accurate than if you got a 150 psi gauge. You're not going to be able to get your pressure exactly dialed in.
There's basically less margin for error when you have that kind of smaller capacity.
So these gauges, this backlit one, actually these batteries last almost 5 or 6 years. And you've got a gauge right here to let you know when you're getting close, and they use AAA batteries, so it's not really even a big deal. And it is twice as accurate in most ranges. So then we've got this push-on chuck. This is called the Hippo 2 chuck. This is our second variation of this. It's just a quick push on and then a pull back on the collar to release. Super easy to use, totally bind free because of the swivels on both sides. These are also a 5-year warranty, and they're fully rebuildable. All of the power tank products, they want you to be able to use them for the rest of your life. So almost everything on the tank is either lifetime warranty or fully rebuildable. We have parts on the shelf for even our earliest systems all the way back to 1997.
That's great. Yeah, I've used pretty much every tire inflator out there on the market, and hands down, the power tank ones I've been definitely most impressed with.
These inflators are one of our most common repeat purchases, and it's not because the inflator is broken. It's because once you go and take the one out of your drawer of your toolbox in the garage, and you're used to one of these, you're going to be disappointed every time.
Yeah, you're pretty much spoiled once you try one of those.
Yeah, so like we actually like to say that it's so good you'll want a spare.
Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of people do get when they get their first tank, this is a new owner kit. It comes with this T-scale so that you can know exactly how much CO2 you still have left in your tank. This wrench to help you quickly switch out regulators. This is a very compact wrench, and it fits in this tight space between the handle grip guard and the regulator nut. So being able to get the maximum throw lets you get the regulator off. It has to be removed every time you get it refilled, or if you have a rotation system, which is a 2-tank system, if you go to switch to your other bottle, you need a wrench to be able to do it.
Yeah,
and both of these, with the new owner's kit, they come in this pickle pouch. That's what we call this. It's not really used for storing pickles, but you could put pickles in this.
So now that we've given you a full rundown on the power tank tanks, I think it's time to head outside and see these in action. And that's really, really what sold me on the power tank systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So now that we are outside, we want to show off the power tank in action. So right now we have a 37-inch tire aired down to around 5 PSI. And we're going to be going up to, I think, what, 35?
Yeah, we'll go 35. Yep.
So we'll go up to 35 and really just show you how quick this happens. With a standard compressor, it's going to take a couple of minutes. But with the power tank here, it is really shocking how quickly you can go from a basically flat tire all the way up to a street pressure.
Yeah, it almost inflates like a balloon.
Yeah.
So what we have here, this is a PT15 system. It's a 15-pound tank. We've got our 400 PSI regulator. This is the XP400 Pro. And this is a typical setup that someone would use if they had tires that were 35 and up. You get, you know, like depending on what your street pressure and your trail pressure are, you get about 5 to 7 fill-ups with a full charge with one of these. So you get a little bit more capacity out of the 15-pound. I mean, that was one of the things that we talked about inside was the performance of all the systems is exactly the same. It's just the capacity. So we're going to use this is a 30-foot hose. Obviously, we're very close, but we just hook this thing right up to the regulator, turn the tank valve on. Since we're inflating tires, we can actually go all the way up to full pressure. On this one, it's 400 PSI. Attach our inflator to the super coupler. Starting pressure is 5.1. Already at 21. You said 35, right?
Yeah, let's hit 35.
35.2.
There you go. So yeah, literally in a matter of seconds, you go from a basically totally flat tire all the way up to street pressure. And yeah, really that's a demonstration that kind of speaks for itself on these kits. If you're running a bigger tire, really just make the airing up so much faster.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's really nothing comparable at all in speed.
Yeah.
One of the nice things also about the way this handle grip guard works, you've got tool storage built right into it. So to keep your stuff out of the dirt, you can actually put both your hose and your tool straight into that, and it'll hold them up there.
Yeah, that's slick.
So for people who have larger tires or maybe just want to get their air ups and air downs done a little bit more quickly, we have this. This is called a monster chuck. This works with our monster valve, which is an accessory valve stem that gets added to your wheel by either drilling a hole, or for some wheels, you actually have the option to add a secondary valve stem. We have particular kits for that. It's mostly KMC applications. But this tool attaches to this. The nice thing is you still have your factory valve stem. So I can monitor the pressure both up and down using a tire gauge. This connects here, and it almost doubles the speed of the already fast power tank. So we're at 15 PSI right now. And as I said, I can watch it go up, and we're already shooting past 19 now. We're at 20, 22, 23, 27. We're gonna shoot for 35. And when we get there, all I have to do is flip that ball valve, and we're already back up to street pressure.
Yeah, so that's incredibly fast, because basically the limiting factor in this whole setup is the standard Trader valve.
Yes.
So going up to the bigger monster valve, you can go even quicker.
Yep, so for larger tires, higher PSI applications, like if you had something like a Ram that goes up to 60 PSI, 70 PSI on these same tires, you would want something like this to take advantage of that extra supply pressure, be able to inflate the tires and be done faster than you would ever imagine.
Yeah, the monster valve, if you're running like a full-size truck with a camper or something in it like that, the monster valve would definitely be great to have because you are going to have to run higher pressures for those heavier weight trucks. So definitely something to think about if you're value your time. So now that we're back inside, one of the first questions that I'd say everyone asks when they're looking into the power tank product is, where do you get them filled?
So there's a lot of different options with that. You can't refill it from your garage compressor. A lot of people misunderstand that initially. It's not compressed air, it's liquid CO2. So you do have to go to a place who can refill a CO2 cylinder. A lot of those places are commercial fire suppression places. Like they're usually able to fill liquid CO2 cylinders even larger than this. Welding supply places sometimes, beverage carbonics. There's a lot of different places. You just need to find a place that can service a liquid CO2 cylinder and fill it preferably while you wait. We do have an interactive map on our website where you can find refillers that we've found. Sometimes just a quick call around to places in the area, you'll be able to find something rather quickly. But that is something to consider if you do think you're going to be going in areas where you've got longer spots between refill locations. A higher capacity tank might be something that's worthwhile for you, even if you do have smaller tires. When you're mounting these, the only real difference in terms of mounting between the 10 and the 15, which is what the bulk of our customers end up getting, is the vertical height. These are the same diameter. So a lot of times you do see people that will have a 10-pound tank and a 15-pound tank based on what kind of trip they're using. But we do have one tank that's larger than this. If you have something massive like an earth roamer that has to have super high tire pressures and large volume, we do have a 20-pound tank. So a 20-pound tank is, again, 5 pounds heavier than this, but it's larger diameter, same height.
Okay, cool. So thanks everyone for watching. If you have any questions on power tank or need some advice on choosing which size or setup is right for your vehicle, go ahead and reach out to us here at Mainline Overland. Happy to answer all your questions on the power tank, and you can shop the whole power tank collection by clicking the link down in the description. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like this video, be sure to leave us a like, comment, and be sure to subscribe and stay up to date on our latest content.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks again, Scott, for stopping in.
Yeah.